likely to be more trouble?
Well, we're hearing still reports of aircraft that are out there. There's no way of knowing when all of the possible incidents have either taken place or been aborted by whoever it is that's behind this. And so we have to be ready for whatever might happen next.
General, can you give us some sense of, clearly the United States has never experienced anything of this magnitude, but what are the leaders of our military, the Joint Chiefs, the Secretary of Defense and others, what presumably are they doing right now in order to be on top of a situation where you have the Pentagon on fire, New York City in a state of chaos, and every federal building in Washington evacuated?
Well, first of all, we'll be trying to assess what happened. We'll be making sure that the protection posture of our bases worldwide and all of our units out there is raised so that we're able to protect our forces and our family members, and then we'll be looking to provide assistance to wherever such incidents might occur. Whatever military capabilities there will be that could be of use will be certainly made available to the other agencies of state, local, and federal government who are involved in trying to deal with these tragedies right now. Then beyond that, we'll be waiting for the information to come in about who may have been behind this, and we'll be looking at what measures can be taken to strike and prevent further actions or in punitive retaliation.
Well, speaking of that, General Clark, wouldn't you agree there are very few of the terrorist groups, at least that we're familiar with, who would have the capability to pull off something this coordinated on this scale?
I think that's exactly right. There's only one group that has ever indicated that it has this kind of ability, and that's Osama bin Laden's. So obviously that'll be the first suspicion.
Are you, clearly we are all in a state of shock, General Clark, but is it fair to say that you're not truly surprised by this given what we've heard from that particular group? And again, we don't know who's behind this, but given what we do know.
Well, there have been many threats made against the United States and threats of terrorism, and we know that the World Trade Center has been a target. We know that aircraft have been hijacked, and we know that car bombings are used in many places in the world, and there's no doubt that for a long time there have been groups who have tried to target the United States. Normally, many times we've gotten indications, we've been able to take actions that the American public never knows about that have broken up these attempts. In this case, for whatever reason, we didn't have the information and we weren't able to take the actions to break it up.
And General, what do you say to those Americans who are looking at these horrific pictures that they've been watching now for almost 3 hours on television, who are thinking, will I ever feel safe again in an airplane, in a tall building in this country?
I think that will be one of the primary issues that has to be addressed by government leaders, is how to restore ever a sense of normalcy to the country. Will it ever be the same? And that's a question everybody will be asking. But I think it's too soon to expect any answers to that. I think we've got to assess this, we've got to track this down. I think one thing that comes through very clearly now is if this is terrorism and international terrorism, then clearly there has to be a much greater degree of cooperation between nations to deal with this. Whoever did this lives somewhere. He's supported by someone, and people know him, and someone knew that these events were being planned. And if we didn't have that information, we should have. And I think that's one resolve that will come out of this from nations all over the world, that more has to be done collectively together.
But in a large sense, General Clark, whoever was behind this has clearly succeeded in the most horrific and devastating way.
Well, it's been a tragedy for America, there's no doubt about that, and for so many people and their families, our hearts go out to them.
General, we're looking, as I'm talking with General Wesley Clark, who is a former NATO commander. He's talking to us from Arkansas. We're looking at helicopters patrolling, I believe it's the area around the Pentagon, although I can't tell by the banner across the lower part of the screen. We do know that President Bush was in Florida this morning. He abruptly cut his trip short in order, we think, to fly back to Washington. And General Clark, while you are with us, what would the plans be for the President in this situation without giving away secure information? Would the President necessarily return to Washington? Is there always a plan in place in these situations?
Well, there would have to be a plan always in place to take the President to where he can best control what's going on and monitor it and make decisions, and also where he will be safe. And you can be sure that there are plans and backup plans and alternate plans to the backup plans. There'll be no shortage of efforts underway to assure his safety and his ability to maintain the continuity of government.
And once again, just finally, General Clark, as we look at these live pictures of the Pentagon, describe for us what you know of the section of the building that evidently was hit by the commercial jetliner.
Well, that picture seems to be from the area of the bridges, the 14th Street Bridge, looking at the corner of the Pentagon that is opposite from where the strike was. So it looks like the strike hit between the 4th, 5th, maybe 6th corridors of the Pentagon. Perhaps on the Army side of the building, there are a number of offices there, administrative offices, where Army leaders and staff officers work on a daily basis. They deal with things like planning and logistics and congressional relations and public affairs in that area. And the Army leadership was probably close to where that may have impacted. There are a number of other facilities below ground, some of which have been relocated, and it's impossible to see from that picture what the condition might be there.
General Clark, any final word before we let you go?
Well, I think that we've known for some time that there were groups planning this, and I think the American people should know that the men and women in government and all the agencies have worked very hard and very diligently against this. Obviously, we didn't do enough. We didn't either have the tools or the cooperation or somehow get the information that we needed to have prevented it. And you can be sure that those men and women are right now resolved to do more and to be more effective. This is a national challenge, and I'm confident that we'll meet it.
All right, General Wesley Clark joining us now from Little Rock, Arkansas. He is, of course, the former commander of NATO. General Clark saying earlier, in his estimation, there is likely to be more trouble given the coordination and the scale of these devastating attacks this morning, September the 11th, 2001, on New York City and on Washington, D.C., and at least 4 commercial jetliners involved in these different attacks. Patty Davis, our Washington correspondent, here with me in the studio. Patty, you have some information about one of those airliners.
That's right, Judy. Well, United Airlines, as you said earlier, is confirming that its Flight 93, that's a Boeing 757, it was en route from Newark to San Francisco, did crash near Pittsburgh. It is also now saying that it is deeply concerned about another flight, that is United Flight number 175, a Boeing 757 that was traveling from Boston to Los Angeles. It said it is deeply concerned about that flight right now. We don't know the status of that particular flight right now. Now, the United Airlines CEO, James Goodwin, saying that the thoughts of everyone at United are with the passengers and crews of these flights, including prayers. United is not saying how many people on board each of these flights, how many flight attendants, how many pilots. So at this point, that is their statement. They're saying one plane. They are confirming Flight 93 that was from Newark to San Francisco crashed near Pittsburgh. Another flight deeply concerned about United Flight 175, Boston to Los Angeles. That's a Boeing 767. Now, on a typical day, there'd be some 4,000 flights of all different aircraft, including military, general aviation, commercial aircraft in the skies. As we've reported here on CNN, the FAA has issued a ground stop, the first ever on all departing flights in the United States. Also, the flights that crashed into the World Trade Center and also into the Pentagon, we are told by the FAA that that was the most restricted airspace that you can get. That was Class B airspace. It doesn't get any more restricted than that. So there should not have been any flights in the areas where those planes came down.
Patty, let me just ask you, the flight that United Airlines says it is, quote, deeply concerned about, the Boston to Los Angeles flight, are they confident that that is not one of the airliners that has already crashed?
United is not going beyond its statement at this point. They're just simply not saying, Judy. I think they're trying to figure it out as much as anybody else. The FBI involved in this as well, and they're trying to track this.
Because what we're trying to do here is piece together whether there is still a flight out there in the air that there are questions about, and I guess I don't have enough information in front of me right now to identify that. And you're saying the airline is just not giving that right now.
Right. Yeah. They are confirming that the one has crashed, but the other one they are not giving any information at this point. So unfortunately, we can't piece that puzzle together just quite yet.
Patty, I would add, as I'm listening to you and we're watching these pictures from, I believe this is the Pentagon, but I'm not sure. I just turned away. This is the Pentagon. I am told that there are wire reports quoting a senior official with the radical Islamic Jihad movement. Now, again, CNN has not confirmed this. It is the radical Islamic Jihad movement saying the attacks are a consequence of United States policy in the Middle East. And again, this is a wire report. We have not been able to confirm it, but we are simply at this point passing along to you as much information as we have. As we look at these extraordinary pictures, developments, the likes of which I think none of us who are reporting to you today have ever seen, I'm going to turn right now back to my colleague in New York, Aaron Brown. Aaron.
Judy, thank you. As we approach noon, about quarter to noon Eastern Time, it was about 4 hours ago that this all began. About 3 hours ago, thank you. At about quarter to 9 Eastern Time, the first of the planes hit the World Trade Center tower, about 30 blocks or so from where we are. And you can still see now the smoke coming from that building. The first of those planes hit, and then 18 minutes later, and we can show you this one, the second tower was hit. That plane, you see it on the right side of your screen, coming behind the tower, and you will see the flame and the smoke coming from the front as that plane, perhaps a hijacked plane. We have, CNN's been told that an American Airlines flight out of Boston, a 767, was hijacked. And that was about 18 minutes after the first. Then as rescue crews began converging, as people desperately tried to get out of those buildings, some 50,000 people work in the Trade Center towers here in Manhattan. As they were trying to get out, the South Tower collapsed. It collapsed in an enormous plume of smoke and spark. And what we can't tell you is if there was a second explosion or if this collapse was simply a structural collapse caused by the plane that hit it perhaps a half hour before. And then just a few minutes after that, it wasn't very long, as you will see, it happened again. The second tower came tumbling down, and you can see that it almost looks like one of those planned implosions, but of course there was nothing planned. And it was not an implosion, as you see.
That was the first tower collapse that we just saw.
There we go. Here's the second one.
This is the collapse of the second tower.
And so now, as we stand here, both towers, the tops of both towers are gone. Behind somewhere, that plume of smoke that continues to rise over the Trade Center. What is left of those buildings, we cannot tell you. We cannot tell you. In Logan Airport, where at least 2, perhaps 3 of the planes involved began their day. Officials now are meeting with reporters, and we can pick that up live.
That we've